Remember how I told you the longer this government shutdown lasts, the worse it's going to get? Well, we are now 20 days into it, and worse is almost here for more than 40 million men, women, and kids who get food assistance from the U.S. government's SNAP program.
And an important role of the government is to provide that safety nest for those with the least among us. Today, I think New York announced that they can't continue taking new enrollees because of the government shutdown in SNAP, in our food stamp program. We're going to run out of money in 2 weeks. So you're talking about millions and millions of vulnerable families, of hungry families that are not going to have access to these programs because of this shutdown.
That was the Secretary of Agriculture who said last week that by November 1st, an estimated 42 million Americans could be shut out of the SNAP program. Recipients just wouldn't get their benefits. Now, just to be clear, SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It used to be called food stamps, and it is the government program that provides food benefits to low-income families in order to supplement their grocery budgets. Now, according to the Agriculture Department, about 12% of U.S. residents receive SNAP benefits, and as of 2024, that SNAP benefit averaged about $190 a month. According to this letter, though, sent to all SNAP administrators in all states nationwide 10 days ago, if the government does not reopen, there will be insufficient funds to pay full November SNAP benefits. The acting administrator of SNAP went on to say in the letter, in the interest of preserving maximum flexibility, state SNAP offices should not be sending out monthly issuance files to vendors. And without those issuance files, vendors cannot load SNAP benefits onto those EBT cards. And if the benefits aren't loaded onto the EBT cards, then SNAP beneficiaries don't have the money to buy the groceries they need. It's a ripple effect. So if you do receive SNAP benefits, what is this going to mean for you? Well, the fact is the government is shut down because, as I've been reporting, Congress cannot agree on how to allocate money to each government department. The Department of Agriculture is one of those government departments, and it oversees SNAP benefits. So until the shutdown is ended, legally, they can't spend any money, including on your SNAP benefits. Each state, though, is handling this differently. Some are doing exactly what this letter says and cutting off all November SNAP payments. Some are reportedly considering sending out partial payments in November, and it's also possible that your state may pay for the benefits up front themselves and then try and get some kind of reimbursement from the federal government. But that is all in limbo right now. So if you are in this program and you are concerned about your November benefits, I highly suggest that you check your state's SNAP program website to figure out if there's anything you should be doing right now to prepare yourself. It's also possible, because of the shutdown, the Trump administration could do for SNAP what they say they are going to do for the WIC program and the 7 million low-income women and children who rely on that food assistance program. The White House said that it will temporarily use tariff revenue to pay for WIC. We will have to wait and see if they choose to do the same thing for SNAP.
Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Across America, many white Americans are growing furious and frustrated after realizing how heavily they rely on SNAP to survive. Rising living costs, job instability, and shrinking rural economies have pushed more families onto food assistance. For years, some believed SNAP was only used by minorities, they mean black people, but the reality is hitting hard. Millions of white Americans, especially in rural areas, depend on these benefits to feed their families. The anchor isn't just about the economy, it's about confronting a truth they never expected. The system they trusted is no longer sustaining them. This is the situation in America. The whites thought SNAP is only made for the black people, but now they need it. Just make sure you watch this video till the end, and we are going to have a good discussion.
If you are naive enough to think that the pause to SNAP benefits on November 1st isn't going to affect you because you don't receive food stamps, I want you to hear this. About 1 in 8 Americans receive SNAP benefits. In fact, in Oklahoma, where I live, that's 1 in 6 people. So about 600,000 people in my state alone, Oklahoma, receive SNAP benefits. About 1 in 4 children in the U.S. receive SNAP benefits. But you're not one of those people, so you don't care, but hang with me. When those benefits go away, just about $9 billion in grocery spending vanishes. So you've got to be thinking about not just the grocery stores being able to stay open and pay their employees, but you have to think about the entire supply chain, trucks on the road, people who provide food to these grocery stores. $9 billion. Every dollar spent in SNAP benefits adds about $1.50 to $1.80 to the economy. So cutting those benefits isn't saving that dollar, it's taking away that $1.50 to your local economy. But you don't receive SNAP benefits, you don't work for a grocery store, you don't drive a truck, you don't give a shit. But when all of those things happen, the only way to combat that is to drastically increase the price of groceries. Grocery prices are already up over 3% in 2025 alone, which is almost an entire percentage higher than the average increase in grocery prices over the last 20 years. I thought they were supposed to go down day one though. So even if SNAP benefits only pause for 1 month, which by the way would be detrimental to all the people I mentioned before that you don't give a shit about, it will cost the economy roughly $13 to $14 billion in profit. And you can expect your grocery prices in just that 1 month to go up at least 1%. And states will stand to lose about $300 to $500 million in sales tax revenue. So even if you do not receive SNAP benefits, you never have, you never will, you do not want these to be paused on November 1st.
If you don't get your SNAP benefits in November and you voted for Trump, please make the video when you realize you're not going to be able to eat for the month of November. If you don't get your SNAP benefits and you voted for Kamala, please let us know and we will make sure that your month of November and Thanksgiving are as equally good as if you got your benefits. We'll get GoFundMe's going, things like that. But only for the people that voted for Kamala.
This morning I called my local DSS office and I asked them to confirm whether or not what I was hearing was true, knowing it was true, that SNAP benefits are not coming next month. And she said, yeah, no, you're right, they're not coming. I said, okay, well, I hadn't heard anything, confirming what I'm hearing, so I was just calling to check. And she said, you're not going to hear anything. And I said, well, why? And she said, well, your local DSS are trying to figure out what's going on, but the state DSS is not planning on telling anybody what's going on. They're not planning on letting the citizens know that they're not going to get their food stamps next month. She also said that this would likely go on into December, that we will likely not get December's SNAP benefits. So that's great. That's lovely. So I'm coming to TikTok in hopes that there is an answer here. I don't know what the answer could be. I don't know what the solution could be. I don't know if is it mutual aid? Is it mutual aid? Do we all need to come together and start pooling our money and help these families like myself, like my mother, like my grandmother, who don't have the money to replace those benefits, who don't have the income to replace those benefits?
42 million Americans receive SNAP benefits, EBT, food stamps, whatever you want to call it, and in about a week on November 1st, there will be no more funding and people's SNAP cards will not have funds loaded on them, which means they will be going hungry. 39% of SNAP benefits in this country go to children, are feeding children. Children are going to go hungry in a week. For everybody asking, what do we do? What should we do? Protest doesn't work. Feed your neighbors. Feed people. This is the time. You need to invite people into your homes to feed them. Start a Food Not Bombs chapter. I don't have all the answers, but there is a clear problem and a clear call to action right now, and that is in 1 week, people are going to go hungry, and it is your job to feed your neighbors. I used to run a Food Not Bombs chapter, and that involved getting food that otherwise would have been thrown out from grocery stores or restaurants, preparing it into a hot, healthy meal, and serving it on the street to literally anyone who wanted it. When I lived in Kansas City, there was a guy on my block that would go to the food bank once a week, and he would get gallons of milk for all of the people on my street that didn't have cars and couldn't carry home heavy groceries, and he would just leave the gallon of milk on their porch. I also ran a carpool for some kids on my block, and I always made sure that I had healthy snacks, I had breakfast, I would pick them up from sports practice or take them to school, and I always made sure that I had food available for them, just in case they didn't have it at home. This involves talking to your neighbors and knowing where people are at and what their needs are, but I implore you in some way, if you feel like you need to do something, you feel compelled to take action, feed your neighbor.
Here's the irony. Many white families using SNAP live in conservative, Republican voting states, places like Kentucky, West Virginia, and Tennessee, where dependence on government aid is actually higher than in a lot of blue states. But that's not something you'll hear at the campaign rallies. Politicians love to talk about lazy people abusing the system until you realize most of those lazy people they're talking about look exactly like the folks cheering them on. Now let's be real. This isn't just about race. It's about class. It's about the fact that millions of Americans of every color are working hard and still can't afford groceries. Wages haven't kept up. Rent is through the roof and food prices are ridiculous. SNAP isn't a handout. It's a survival tool. And it's not just for the poor. It's for working families who've been squeezed to the point that they can't make it from paycheck to paycheck without help. But when you cut that help in the middle of inflation, what you're really saying is, good luck starving quietly. What's really wild is the emotional reaction. A lot of white SNAP users online are shocked, and a few are flat out denying the data. But you can only ignore reality for so long. The system isn't broken because of who uses it. It's broken because Americans have been lied to about who it's for. The whole welfare queen myth, the idea that food stamps are only for minorities, that was propaganda. And now, the truth's coming back around to bite. Meanwhile, food banks in rural America are bracing for chaos. If the federal cuts hits in November, they're expecting a wave of new demand from families who've never asked for help before. These are people who've always prided themselves on doing it themselves, who now have to face the fact that the safety net they once ignored is the only thing keeping them afloat. And that's the part that stings the most. But maybe, just maybe, this moment can wake people up. Poverty doesn't care what color you are. Hunger doesn't care who you voted for. And when a government that claims to fight for the working class turns around and slashes their grocery money, maybe that's the moment when folks realize the problem isn't who's getting help. The problem is why so many people need it in the first place. So yeah, white Americans are furious, but they're not just mad at the government. They're mad at the mirror. They're realizing they were never separate from the system they looked down on. They were part of it all along. And now that the safety net's getting yanked, it's not about them anymore. It's about you. You'll think. Are you surprised to learn that white Americans make up the largest share of SNAP users? And how do you think cutting benefits like this will impact rural and working class communities? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. I would love to keep this discussion going.
Welcome back. You find that some white Americans become furious when they realize that they rely on SNAP. Why are they becoming furious? It's because they were told SNAP was not for them. For decades, many Americans believed the stereotypes that food stamps were mostly used by minorities. What do they mean by minorities? They mean the black people. They thought that white people did not need help. When they discover that most SNAP users in many states are actually white, it shocks them. It breaks the image they had of themselves and their communities. Another reason that they rely on SNAP is because of the economic decline hitting rural white communities hard in America. Many white areas are facing factory closures. They're facing dying small towns, low-paying jobs, rising living costs, and also high medical bills. And when people who always believed they were middle class suddenly need assistance, it causes anger and embarrassment. These whites, some of them feel embarrassed, some of them are furious, and some of them are confused. You find that pride and identity conflict is another thing that is making the whites rely on SNAP. You find that some white Americans were raised to believe we don't rely on government help. Only lazy people use food stamps. Now they realize themselves need SNAP, and this creates frustration because it clashes with their identity. We have political narratives misleading white people. For years, political rhetoric framed SNAP as something used mainly by urban people, minorities. And I say when I mean minorities, I say the black people, and also those not working hard. When white families discover they are actually some of the biggest users, They feel misled and betrayed by politicians and media voices. You find again the system isn't working for the whites either. As they say, it's not working for the black people. And thus, these white Americans are realizing that wages are too low for them. They are realizing that rent is also too high. They are realizing that healthcare is unaffordable and groceries are very expensive. Thus, they are angry because the system they thought protected them is now failing them. The system isn't working for them. They thought it's not working for the black people only, but also it's not also working for them. These white people feel like their struggles were ignored. That's why they are getting on SNAP. They feel like their poverty wasn't taken seriously. Their struggles were hidden behind stereotypes, and no one admitted how widespread white rural poverty is. Now the truth is becoming visible, and that realization creates anger, fear, frustration, and confusion among the white people. These white people are in shock because they thought that SNAP was mainly for black Americans. A long time misconception in the US is that food assistance is mostly used by black people. Media and political messaging often reinforce this image, even though it wasn't accurate. They also thought that the SNAP was for immigrants because they always have a stereotype that most of the immigrants are black people. So they believe that undocumented immigrants, all newly arrived immigrants, are the main users, even though most immigrants don't qualify. And SNAP is primarily used by US born citizens. They thought that SNAP was for urban poor. What do I mean urban poor? Another stereotype is that food stamps were meant for people living in the big cities, California, minority communities, black people, inner city neighborhoods. In reality, rural white communities use SNAP at very high than the so-called urban poor. They thought that SNAP was also for the people who don't go to work, because they have in mind that these people who don't go to work, they are lazy. And thus, at least one working adult in every family or in every white family, there is. So they thought, because they have at least one working adult, they are not getting these SNAPs. But they reclaim that black people are lazy, so they're the ones who need the SNAP. But now it's a shock because they realize that they actually need SNAP more than these other people. It's a shock in America. Another stereotype they put in mind that is that SNAP was made for other groups, but not them as white people. And in many white rural communities, there was a cultural belief that we don't take handouts. We work hard, we don't use welfare. But the economy changed and many now need help, which creates the shock. They believed SNAP was for black people. But in reality, SNAP has always been used by people of all races. And in many states, the majority of users are white Americans in rural communities. So you find these white people are in shock. They are like, what? This is for us too? Many are genuinely surprised. They grew up believing SNAP was for other people, not their own communities. The realization it's hard and feels like a sudden wake-up call. They feel embarrassment and they feel shame because of pride. This makes them feel ashamed, embarrassment, like they are failed people, like they shouldn't need this. they are in anger and frustration because they are assuming that the economy has failed them, the wages are too low, jobs have disappeared. They were misled by politicians. The system they trusted isn't supporting them. They are furious, they are struggling just like the people they once judged, that is the black people. And now they are blaming the system, the government, the economy, the corporate grids, the rising cost, because they find that they rely on this SNAP. They are realizing that the stereotypes that they don't need this SNAP are just lies. Because SNAP is not for minorities. Poverty affects all races, and rural white communities struggle the most in some areas. So they are coming to an acceptance that times are hard. Everyone needs help sometimes, and pride won't feed their kids. Like in America, these white people are coming to an understanding that poverty doesn't look one way. It might look on the black people, and also it might look on the white people. They are coming to understand that anyone can get into struggles, and that stereotypes were harmful and very false, and this leads to more empathy and awareness in America. So the whites America, after discovering that they also rely on SNAP, many of them feel like they are in shock, they are embarrassment, they are frustrated, and on this you find that they blame the government and they blame the harsh conditions in America. So you find these white people actually they rely on SNAP more than the black people. The black people, they thought they are the ones who need the SNAP, and it's a shock to them right now. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for always following up on every video. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Make sure you share this video, and let's meet on the next video.